It's so beautiful. And Mom and Dad had such a wonderful love story all these years. There might have been a little bit of friction now and then, but they liked that. Anyway, this was the living room, but they have both passed on. Mom and Dad. Here's how it happened. One night I was staying over to help Dad all night because he had deteriorated to the point where he had to get up, and I logged every reason and every time, and it was 15 times. And one night he was just so exhausted, the poor old guy, and he had expressed many times the wish to die. And so we got hospice in the next morning. They put him in the hospice program, explained that he would be getting morphine for the pain of all his bladder infections and such, which only allowed him to sleep for like 20 minutes to 2 hour stretch at the most. So the poor guy was just in such pain, and they can't do anything for that. He was 90 years old, all his friends had died, most of them. And so he was just miserable and ready to move on, and he kept telling us this. When I had him at the VA during one of these flare-ups of the UTI before we got into the hospice program, they were so nice. They were so good at it. But the VA has had a lot of problems with suicides of soldiers in recent years. And so it's their policy. They got to ask Dad, okay, well, I'm sorry, you told the nurse that you wish to die. Does that, do you think you would need to talk to a psychiatrist? Actually, they told me this while Dad was unconscious. And I said the chances of Dad wanting to talk to a psychiatrist are 100% no. He doesn't. There's a very logical reason he's depressed. It's being 90 years old with most of your friends dead. You can't golf anymore, and you can't sleep for more than 2 hours. It's torture. And so they decided that he didn't need to talk to a doctor. We got him home. We explained everything to him. He acknowledged that he understood. And then we all, over the next couple of days, because it didn't immediately put him under, we started with the morphine. He was laying in bed right next to Mom, dear old Mumsy, who was also very frail and very sick, and she had lost so much weight. She was down to 83 pounds. This is the bedroom here. And so it was a nice view, but they were always cold and they kept the shutters. And they would sleep day and night. Towards the end, they were really having a hard time physically. And so we were taking care of them in 24-hour shifts. So here I was. There's this little bed, well, little compared to their king-size bed. And since they got here in November, there had been a battle over who was hogging the covers. So it wasn't all harmony, but it was when they were laying in bed together. Dad is already in his morphine stupor, so we know he's not in any pain, and that was great. We've explained things to Mom. She wasn't too jazzed about it, but they are at the end of the road, and they've run out of gas. And so that was the situation. We all comforted Mom, and so she was laying there, pretty frail herself, holding hands with her boyfriend. They've been married 63, almost, wait, I think it's 68, yeah. Almost their 68th anniversary. Doesn't matter, just a number. But the number represented this beautiful love story. Both Mom and Dad have passed now. Mom 5 days after Dad. And so while she was passing, when Dad passed, the people came and got her into a hospital bed. And so then she was pretty medicated. And my brothers and sisters and I had a big discussion about do we wake her up and tell her Dad died, or we just let nature take its course. And she had been put in hospice too, so we could have done the morphine routine. And my sister was adamant. She thought that Mom should be awakened and told that Dad has passed. And so we did that while Dad's bones were still here. His earth suit, which he had worn out in 90 years, and then he escaped. And in our family's understanding, we're all in cahoots on this. Dad is in heaven and waiting for Mom, and Mom now is there. I'm so glad that they both passed. I could have announced on my YouTube channel, hey, my dad passed. And then I would have got a wave of prayers and concern and sympathy from the people in the comments section. You know who you are. I love you. I am so grateful that I have a YouTube channel. And so when a hard time comes along, it's not. There's so many people with so much prayer and encouragement and good wishes. But if I had Dad pass and announced it, you would have all given me the wonderful comforting. But I was still in the third shift mode with Mom. And so I didn't want 2 waves of comments to react to when it was all a bundle. And it was. Mom passed 5 days after, and so we've set the memorial service for the date of their wedding anniversary. And so I was telling Mom that she was getting very feeble. She had a couple of strokes. My brother Ed and I had to intervene because Ed was working third shift. I think I was supposed to relieve him at 8 a.m. So I get here a little early and I go, what's going on? And Ed said, well, she's obviously had a stroke. And so I called 911 and they're here. And I said, what's with the gurney? And they said, well, we're taking her to the hospital to check her out. And I said, I'm sorry. Mom is not leaving her dying husband's side. This is where she stays. And if you want me to sign some paperwork, he said, well, we have to take her in for observation. And I said, like I said, if you want me to sign some paperwork releasing you from liability because you're not taking her, that's fine. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer. And my brother and I were literally standing between them and my dilapidated mom so that they wouldn't take her in for observation, as is their policy, but it made no sense in this case. So we got that stopped. So Mom got to be with her husband, who died a day and a half later. And it was kind of fun. It does sound weird to be telling you this, but it was kind of fun. There's the big bed, and I come in because Mom, in the middle of the night, had coughed, but it sounded like Doug. She sounded like she was calling for me. And so I go in there and I check her, and she's just talking in her sleep. And towards the end, she was saying a lot of things in a very slow whisper. That's all she could do after the strokes. And so I checked on her, rubbed a little water on her lips from the sponge thing, and I was walking out. So I'm coming around the side of the bed. So Mom was here and Dad was here, and Dad was real out of it. 20 minutes before I had given him, wait a minute, there you are. So 20 minutes before, there was a queen-size bed here and they're both in it. And Dad was in the final stages, I could tell, because his breath was a slower, irregular pattern. He was really settled down by that morphine. And it had gone on for like 2.5 days, and then they said, double the dose and double the frequency. So we're really hammering Dad with that, but the goal here is to get him to pass, and pass peacefully without any pain, because there was no fixing him, and he was suffering so badly. So here he is, and here's Mom, and they're both in bed, and I go check on Mom, and as I'm coming around the corner, I always squeeze Dad's toes, give his calves a little massage, whether he's sleeping or not. He knows Doug is here caring for him and protecting him, so that was beautiful. But I come up this way, and I get past his calves, and then I go to his arms, and I'm sort of rubbing his shoulders, and I come down, and this arm is really cold because it had been outside of the blankets. And then I look down his face, you see that gray tint, and it's almost greenish gray. Anyway, I recognized it, that he had passed. Ed had been woken up by the cough Mom did, so he was in the bathroom, and when he came out, I said, hey, double check. I think our father has just passed. And he came in and he said, yeah. His eyes got real wide. And so we called the siblings who came at 3 a.m. and we said a prayer, maybe 2 around Dad. Mom was still zonked. Then we had the debate whether to wake up Mom and tell her this or just go ahead with the morphine. And I was on the morphine side because I thought that would be the best way for Mom, because if she came out of this and somehow decided she's a fighter, she's going to live to 110, there was no way that was going to happen because of her steady weight loss. So anyway, we decided, because my sister had a lot of good points, we got to wake up Mom. We got to tell her Dad passed. And so we did, and she was pretty cool with it because we all knew that's the end game here. There's no moving out of the old folks' home and back into society. So this is the work to be done. Mom now had to pass peacefully. And we talked about it, and we did the best job with my parents in this. I'm so proud of my family. My brothers and sisters rallied like you wouldn't believe. There's so much to be done, especially the situation where we were in. You know, it's not one parent has memory loss. It was 2 with memory loss, and a lot of the shenanigans that go on. I'm an experienced caregiver, and it can get ridiculously hard to care for someone who cannot understand what you're wanting them to do, cannot help you keep them safe, cannot help you keep them pain-free or even clean. So we missed the bulk of that. We got some of it, and some of it was really fun. And Mom, she had had a stroke, and she was pretty much helpless, paralyzed, although there was something going on where she kept raising her hands. And so we talked to hospice about it, and they said that's her from the strokes. That's what her body is doing. And it also indicates upset because she's seeing things that aren't there towards the end. But, you know, we always assumed Mom's in there. Okay, so don't say anything mean around Mom or she will figure out a way to communicate about Mom. Yeah. So, in fact, she heard the other night my sisters had come in and they were singing to her, and she could relax. She could react a little bit by going like this. And that was all. That was all she could give us, except for a faint, really slow whisper, which we couldn't understand what she was saying. So it was a little bit sad because she wanted to be heard, but we didn't know what she was talking about, and so that's where we were in the process. And I called to see how Mom was doing. My sister took the phone call outside of the room and said, "Oh, hi, Doug." And then Mom thought I had just arrived. And so she indicated that they wanted me there. And so even though I was supposed to work, oh no, that was my night off. So I jumped in the car and I came down here, and we still had a fun time with Mom. We called it a rally, where we knew she was hearing us. And we had to turn her over, but she's paralyzed by the stroke, and she's 80 pounds. She is just a skinny little bag of bones. So I arrive, and I come in, and I say, so she can hear me in a nice loud voice, "Hey, Mom, how are you?" And she's just as skinny as can be. So I grab her bony hand, and I say, "Mom, there's really good news. That diet you've been working on all your life, it's working! It's finally working!" And I could hear her. She was laughing. She was laughing. And so I rally the girls. We're going to all, at one point, we've got a sheet underneath her. We're going to roll her on her side, because they say to do that so she doesn't get bed sores, and it probably feels good to her. So we're all getting ready. She's completely helpless. And I said to my sisters on the other side, "All right, I'm going to lift this way, and you guys pull on that sheet. We're gently roll her over, just like she's our little pie crust." And all of us are cooks, so we were cracking up. And she She was laughing at that, so she's getting rolled over and she's going, that's... So at the very edge of death, we had this wonderful moment. And we had a bunch, my sisters were singing with her. They were having some wine, and they would give her a little spoonful of white wine in a spoon. It was fun. She couldn't wrap her lips around a straw. That's how weak she was. And yet she was having happy hour with us. And I'm glad I didn't miss it. And it was such a fitting, I mean, I got time alone with Mom to caress her forehead and to tell her, I love you. And she would go, and I'd come closer, and I assumed she was saying, I love you too. It was just such a wonderful thing. And I said, you know, you're going to pass, and you're going to meet Dad in heaven. But this is the most wonderful love story here on earth, that you guys had this wonderful marriage. It lasted 68 years. You died in the same time frame, and you'll have your memorial on your wedding anniversary. And she was cool with that. And to my viewers who were following my bicycle camping trip from Michigan to Florida last year, you know that I got the call, hey, Mom and Dad are really sick and they need the caregiver, and you agreed to do it. And I said, yes, I did. So I hopped on the plane. I left my gear in Chattanooga, and now I'm going to be able to return there and keep my bicycle trip going. But the reason I didn't go back there this fall, is I realized Mom was losing weight steadily, and I didn't want her to pass while I was on the road. So I came and told her that in November, when she was very lucid, and she said, well, that is an answered prayer, thank you. And so when I realized that I had to stay, I couldn't go on my trip with my mom in such a condition, and it would be indefinite, you know, she could have lived to be 110. So once I realized that, I thought, the trip doesn't matter right now. I gotta stay with my mom, and I want to be there to hold her hand when she passes. And guess who was there holding her hand? I will insert the beautiful photograph now. You can see how skinny she had gotten. And so it was time. Death is 100% natural. But both Mom and Dad had this old school attitude about it, that it was something fearful and somehow a loss that you fight against. And it was not the case in the end. Mom finally said to herself, yeah, it's probably time, and passed peacefully. When she did, my sister Amy and I were here, but it was my turn to sleep, so no, I was in the other room eating a ham sandwich. I'm sorry, I confess, when my mother died, that's what I was doing. But she said, Amy called and said, it's from the other room. She called and said, I think our mother has passed. So I came in and saw the gray tone and no motion. She had been suddenly breathing every 25, 30 seconds without anything in between. And so we knew by the pattern that she was almost gone. So they're gone, and the next step is to pack up and move out of their unit, which they'd only been a little while. They had, my dad was so much in pain and confusion that he didn't like going out of the room, down to dinner and meeting people, and his hearing wasn't good, and his hearing aids weren't working right, and he was just a miserable old guy. And so I'm so glad he's at peace. I had no sadness over either one of them, and I was telling my brothers and sisters while we were congratulating each other that we really had dodged a bullet with how sick they could have gotten if they lived on and on. And also, none of us are faithless. None of us are subjected to the cruelty of seeing life without any kind of spirituality. You would just have to say, oh, They got old and they died, and that's it, and there's nothing. And that is not the case with any of us. In fact, it is so solid that there's faith. And you know, you're going through a crisis and you want to have faith that all the things that you've done to learn about spirituality and to follow the rules like my mom and dad did. Catholic, they would go to church every Sunday. My mom was a Eucharistic minister. My dad was one of those ushers that counts the money. And he also did Meals on Wheels. He was a volunteer at a whole bunch of things. We had a Catholic priest in here and gave them the last rites while they were alive. My brother's a Eucharistic minister. He brought them communion. They both had a sudden interest in watching EWTN. It's a Catholic network on their cable, and so that was a good thing, a timely thing for them. So we were all in cahoots that this was a beautiful thing because they are passing on to their reward and they will live on. None of us think that it's all over for Mom and Dad. Not at all. We think it's a beautiful love story. So it's a happy love story because they dodged this bullet of laying there waiting for someone to change their diapers. It's just, the quality of life was absolutely gone for both of them. The only quality they had was in these moments where I would tease Mom or the girls would sing for them. They sung for Dad too. One of their favorites is from the Bing Crosby movie about the big show they're going to have for the Christmas. Well, I forget what that's called. Anyway, one of the songs is Sisters, Sisters, never were the more devoted sisters. And they used to sing this when I was a kid. And so I'm their bratty brother. And I would always sing, Sisters, Sisters, never were there more obnoxious sisters. Many people try to shut us up, but no one can. So I did not sing my version of this when they sang theirs, out of respect for everyone involved. We were all very kind to each other. We all had this faith in common. And what I was going to say about faith is that they don't teach you once you learn it. Once you learn the spirituality that makes you feel resonant with all it is and makes you feel the way you want to feel about your relationship with your Creator. That's great. And there's a step beyond faith, I can report, and my brothers and sisters agreed. Yeah, you're right, Doug, that is true. That is where we are. The step beyond faith is certainty. We all had made it in our long spiritual journeys. We're all in our 60s. We had all made it to certainty. And so on our deathbeds, when our kids are comforting us, and we'll be able to comfort them right back, saying, this is not all there is. And I recognize this. I asked my mom when I get there to heaven, would she be the first to greet me? And she said she would, in her little stroked out whisper. So we had our goodbye, and it was a beautiful thing. And my dad and I had our goodbye, and that was beautiful. And so I'm here in this empty place. They got rid of the husk, the earth suit, which is no longer needed. And I'm packing up. My heart is not heavy. I thank you all for your wonderful wishes and prayers. And leave a comment. It's okay to talk about your parents passing or whatever you want to do, and it can be a memory that you have with sadness. But you see how Mom and Dad had come to the end of the road, the end of their quality of life, and none of us were wanting to hold them here. We wanted them to pass, and that's what happened. And the people here at Story Point have just been so wonderful. And they've thought it's pretty cool that there was a steady parade since they got here of sons and daughters of Ed and Doris here to help. And we did a fantastic job. So I was very honored to be a part of that. My parents passing. Both of them gone now. Both of them at peace. Walking around heaven. Mom is saying, oh honey, isn't it so beautiful? And since Dad's not in pain, he's agreeing. Yes it is, Doris. Yes it is.